Hey everyone, Jeanette here. Welcome back to another video. So as you can see, we got some snowfall, and where I live here in upstate New York, it's right on time because a lot of times we get a very significant snowfall right around Thanksgiving, which is coming up here in a couple of days for us here in the United States. So in today's video, I've got a couple of very easy dishes that you can throw together for your Thanksgiving meal. They're whole food, plant-based, completely vegan, and I think by leaving them just as is, even the people who don't eat plant-based at your table are really going to enjoy these because they are really tasty. So what I have in today's video is a butternut squash and greens dish and a wild rice dressing. While these dishes might look complicated, I took them both for a test drive last night at dinner, and they're surprisingly easy to put together. So I have a couple of tips for you as well. Your wild rice and your roasted butternut squash are each going to take about 45 minutes to cook. So this is the time when you want to get your onions and your celery, your mushrooms all chopped and ready to go, lay out your spices, get your veggie broth ready. This is called mise en place. It's getting everything in its place. So this is a good time to take advantage of that passive cooking to get the other things ready. The other tip is see if you can take advantage of any pre-cut items at your grocery store. I did this with the butternut squash and the kale and spinach greens that I used. So I didn't have to go through peeling and de-seeding and chopping up a whole squash. I just bought a container of it. It was already cut. All I had to do was dump it onto a baking tray and put it in the oven. For the butternut squash dish, I just threw together some things that I thought might taste good together. So you have the complement of the onions and the garlic, these aromatics and savory notes, mixed in with your butternut squash, which has kind of got a little bit of earthiness and sweetness to it. And then it's got the dried cranberries and then the bitterness of the greens. So you've kind of got several different tastes going on at the same time in one dish. But use this as a platform to develop your own dish. If you wanted to add some maybe chopped pecans to it, or you don't like dried cranberries, you can leave that stuff out or add things in. For the wild rice dressing, I honestly just adapted a recipe from my mom's dressing that I remember her making for years and years. And I think what she used were the bag dried bread cubes, 2 sticks of butter, onion, celery, poultry seasoning, salt, pepper, and I think she used chicken broth. Then she put it in a casserole dish and bake it, and I'm not gonna lie, it was freaking delicious. But for this one, I tried to adapt it to more whole food plant-based. That's what I'll often do is I'll look at the traditional way it's made or the way that I remember it throughout my childhood and then make adaptations and substitutions to try to make it a bit more wholesome. So for this, I opted for a wild rice blend, but if you can't find that or don't like it, you could use rice, you could use quinoa, substitute a different grain for it. I like the wild rice because it's got a nice bite to it, it's nice and chewy, it has a nice earthy flavor, and it's also very pretty to look at, it's very colorful. Instead of butter, I just left that out altogether, obviously. And what I did was just cooked my wild rice in some no chicken broth, or you could use vegetable broth, just for some extra flavor, and it adds that saltiness factor and some savory notes. I, of course, kept the poultry seasoning because it has all those aromatics that we associate here with Thanksgiving. The thyme, sage, rosemary, it's just so incredibly aromatic. Salt and pepper as needed, and of course I kept the onion and the celery. And I decided to add a mushroom medley to this just because I love mushrooms. They're savory, they're, I don't know, they add that extra something to it. If you don't like mushrooms, you can obviously leave these out. And I did add some chopped pecans, almonds, and dried cranberries, but you can of course leave those out as well. All right, so the first thing I did was roasted my butternut squash, and I did this at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for about 40 to 45 minutes, just keeping an eye on it so it doesn't burn. And I just set that aside so I could get the rest of my things going in the pan. Here I have 1 diced up shallot. If you don't have a shallot, you can always use just a regular onion or even some leeks. And 1 clove of minced garlic, as well as about a 1/4 cup of dried cranberries. And I also have a little bit of no chicken broth at the ready. That's about a 1/2 cup so that I can cook my onions and garlic. I just saute my onions and garlic in the no chicken broth, and I saute the onions until they get nice and soft and they start to brown. Then I throw in my garlic and saute for about a minute. I'm just using a, pre-chopped blend of kale and spinach that I got at the store, and it's already chopped up, but I'm chopping up just a little bit finer because I like the smaller pieces in this. As the onions cook, I just add a splash of the broth as needed to prevent everything from burning and sticking. And it also, as you can see, helps to deglaze the pan and scrape up all those beautiful caramelized sugars from the onions and mix that in for some great flavor. Once the onions and garlic are cooked, I add in my greens, and I'm going to add in just a little bit more of the no chicken broth to help it along, and I'm going to saute the greens until they start to wilt down. Then I add in my cooked squash and just let everything heat through.
Whatever this is, it didn't sign a release to appear on the video.
All right, once everything is heated through, then I add in my chopped dried cranberries, a little bit of salt and pepper to taste, and there's the finished dish. All right, for the wild rice dressing, I just dice up a couple of stalks of celery, as well as a shallot, or you could use an onion or even some leeks if you like. I'm using a bag of mixed frozen mushrooms. You could use fresh, of course, and some poultry seasoning. And what I do is just saute the onions and celery in a pan over medium-high heat, just a little bit of water added, and I saute until the onions and the celery get nice and soft. Then I add in my mushrooms and I cook until those are nice and browned, and you can see everything is reduced in size here and the flavors have concentrated. And then I'm going to add in about a teaspoon of poultry seasoning, as well as a little bit of salt and pepper to taste. This is the rice blend that I use, but like I said, you can use any grain that you prefer. And then I just throw my cooked rice into the skillet with the onions and the celery and the seasonings and let everything kind of mix together. And for this, I added in about a quarter cup of chopped up dried cranberries, as well as a couple tablespoons of chopped almonds and pecans. And then I had a jar of truffle salt on hand, which adds a really nice flavor, but if you don't have anything fancy like this, don't worry about that. Alright, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video with a couple of very easy, hearty, beautiful, flavorful dishes that you can add to your Thanksgiving dinner table. Drop me a line down below. Let me know if you are interested in making these or if you did make them. How did they turn out? And I want to know what kind of spin you guys put on them yourselves. Alright, so I hope everybody has a wonderful Thanksgiving. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.